What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Spencer. I am here again on Sunday morning. We are not live on the radio, unfortunately, due to some technical difficulties, we'll call it. But it's just after 8 o'clock, and we would be on 98.9 FM at 1340 a.m. if we were uh, on the radio. But I'm coming to you from the Wisden, also known as my room here in Pahrump, as Brian is in Detroit visiting his father for this week. So we are here because we have been booted from the Fox Sports Presidential Bancorp studio until further notice due to COVID protocol going on for about 2 years now, I think. But social distancing back in the Fox Sports Residential Bancorp studio would be Chris Chapman, aka Magnum, who, aside from producing a number of shows at Lotus Broadcasting, is a locker room reporter for the Vegas Golden Knights radio network. And then in just a second, I will be joined by Vegas radio regular Chris Winn. The show is only streaming on the LV Sports Network, and you can watch the show also on Facebook Live, Twitter, and YouTube. The page is called Out of Line. That's OUTTAINLINE. You can follow the show on Twitter at Out of Line Fox LV, and we can't take phone calls today, unfortunately, but hopefully in the future we will be able to do that again.
Hi, this is Bubby, and it's time for What's on Tap.
What's on Tap is brought to you by title sponsor Residential Bancorp. Whether purchasing a new home or refinancing the home you already own, Residential Bancorp is the company to turn to for all your home financing needs. Residential Bancorp, funding America one neighborhood at a time. Call 702-964-5720 for more details on what Brian Feldman can do for you. On Tap, for once seemingly a major trade went down in the NHL without the Golden Knights being involved. If Magnum is able to join, we will talk about that. In just a moment, we're going to discuss Russell Westbrook's recent debacle and the Lakers situation in general. Then I have a great guest coming on, RJ White, who just purchased a $1 million parcel of land in the Metaverse. I have a million questions related to all of that, so I can't wait to get into that discussion. And then later we'll discuss Baker Mayfield and Jimmy Garoppolo as time permits. That's what's on tap. If you're looking to buy a home or refinance the home you currently own, choose a company you can trust. Residential Bancorp, funding America one neighborhood at a time. So just call 702-964-5720 to hook up with Brian, who will give you the best deals in the Las Vegas area when it comes to mortgages. We're going to go ahead and get started here. No nightcaps today, no Magnums with us, but I do have Chris Winn, and I'll fix that real quick. I do want to start well, first of all, Chris, before I just start jumping right into it, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great, Wiz. It's good to join you, and hope Brian's enjoying himself, getting some family time, heading back to the great state of Michigan, which Wiz, as you know, is also my home state as well, too. So,
yeah, the last time he was in Michigan, he saw the most heartbreaking field goal probably in Lions history, when Justin Tucker illegally, by the way, where they were out in the field, made a 64-yarder and broke the record. But I think he's probably having a little bit of a better time. I know his dad just retired from being a doctor, so I think they're celebrating that. But someone who isn't celebrating, that is the Lakers. So big news. Russell Westbrook, he parted ways with his longtime agent. So I have a couple of quotes I want to go over here. This was a little bit shocking to me. I mean, I think they had been together like his entire career. So this is a quote from his longtime agent, now former agent. Now, with the possibility of a fourth trade in 4 years, the marketplace is telling Lakers they must add additional value with Russell in any trade scenario. Such a trade may require Russell to immediately move on from a new team via buyout. My belief is that this type of transaction only serves to diminish Russell's value, and his best option, is to stay with the Lakers, embrace the starting role, and support that Darvin Ham publicly offered. So Russell is a first ballot Naismith Hall of Fame player, and he will prove that again before he is retired. Where do you think Russell Westbrook stands? And where could the disparity possibly be? I don't know. This guy's had your back for so long. He got you a super max deal. Where do you think Russell Westbrook is in his mind? How good do you think he is? Where does this even come from?
Let me tell you something, Wiz. I mean, you talk about Russell Westbrook. He's had a pretty good NBA career. There's no question about that. This is a guy who, quite possibly could be in the Hall of Fame discussion. And, he's had a career arc that, isn't defined by defense nor necessarily playing off the ball. And you talk about last year, the whole point of getting Russell Westbrook was to get him on the court with LeBron James, Anthony Davis, right? That was the plan. That was what they're trying to do. And they, quite frankly, just weren't able to do that. There was a 21 game sample size last year where you had all those guys on there. So, so look, I don't think the Lakers are all out as far as Russell Westbrook. We obviously heard new head coach Darvin Ham, who's gone out of his way to, toe that line of saying great things about Russell Westbrook. In his introductory press conference, Ham was going, as far as he's calling Westbrook one of the best players the league has ever seen, which, to a lot of us, I think that might be a little bit preposterous, but, this is Darvin Ham, in his short time as the Lakers head coach, has stated time and time again that he feels he's got a, quote unquote, full-hearted plan to get the most out of Russell Westbrook next season, and that's, that's based on his feelings on what Russell Westbrook brings to the table. Now, obviously, you've heard some reports in the media, particularly ESPN's Brian Windhorst, who thinks now that the Lakers should take a course of action, Wiz, and I'm kind of curious of what you think about this, where they should basically sit him out. During the season, sit him out the rest of the season, and until the Lakers can actually make a deal for him. So it's just a whole messed up situation. Given, if you're a Laker fan, and when the deal was originally made to bring Russell Westbrook to back home to Los Angeles, I should say, where he had a great college career, obviously at UCLA. And the idea of what the Lakers were going to be with all these top players and with the supporting cast there in Los Angeles, it's got to be extremely disheartening, I think is a fair thing to say, for Laker Nation and all those fans down there in Southern California and here in Vegas, quite frankly, that it just hasn't shaken out the way you expected it.
Yeah, I think hindsight is unfair to just say that, like everybody could see the Westbrook, trade failing, like it was never going to go from the start. Do you think it was doomed from the start, or do you think it is salvageable? Like, do you think Russell Westbrook can find a way to play with LeBron and Anthony Davis at some point, somehow, with this Lakers team?
I think it's still salvageable. I really do. Because, look, it's not even necessarily about the Lakers at this point. It's about the teams in the Western Conference that is going to be problematic. You got the Golden State Warriors, who are back. You have a team that's trying to make moves and trying to get themselves back to a level where they were, in the NBA Finals just 2 years ago in the Phoenix Suns. You got some upstart teams in the Western Conference as well, too, obviously in the Denver Nuggets and some other teams as well, too, and the Clippers. So, I mean, to me, it's not necessarily just all about the Lakers. I get it. It's the Lakers. Everybody wants to talk about, their viability and what they do internally and all this. And I get that with Rob Pelinka and this team. But I still think that Russell Westbrook has plenty left in the tank. And if they can find a way to kind of get everybody healthy and get on the court and just get back to basketball, and if Darvin Ham can kind of weave that web and can kind of work some magic there as the head coach, which obviously I think is an important part of this too, is that, you now have a new head coach who's trying to establish himself and trying to just get his own thing going there with Los Angeles. I think there's absolutely room for improvement and a way that the Lakers can get back to relevancy, I should say, in the Western Conference.
Yeah, so I'm curious, when you think of the best version of Russell Westbrook for this Lakers team, what do you imagine that being? What is it on the court? What is he doing specifically? Is he aggressive scoring? Does he stay with is he the first, or is LeBron and Anthony Davis the first to come off, right, the court? And then he runs with the bench unit for 5 or 10 minutes, and there's a lot of LeBron AD time. Is it all three of them together? Does it have to be that way? What is it, him and Anthony Davis? What is it that Westbrook's going to do that is going to make him actually a viable piece for the Lakers, you think?
Well, there's a couple ways to look at it. To me, the best version of Russ with that Laker team with LeBron and Anthony Davis is the guy that we get that gets 20 and 10 a night. He's got to be one of the focal points, maybe even more so than LeBron when it comes to the offensive standpoint of this team. LeBron James has to be quite honest with you, Wiz, I think LeBron James has to be more the distributor, right? LeBron James got to be more the facilitator. LeBron James is going to have to take a step back just a little bit from an offensive standpoint, because I think this team, with those three guys on the court playing, 35 minutes a game, all three of those guys, I think Russ has got to be more offensively in tune than even LeBron James. So Anthony Davis, I think, will get his and will continue to be a focal point offensively for them. But I don't think it's going to work if it's going to be a situation like some people believe it should be, where Russell Wilson is option number 3 and has to cut back on his offensive input. I think that's the case. Then I think it could be very problematic for this team.
Yeah, and as I'm looking through the Lakers roster this year, they have a lot of veterans, and they got a little bit younger this year. It's more of like a last chance you version of the Lakers. And if I go through like Troy Brown Jr., Kent Bazemore, Kendrick Nunn, like Stanley Johnson, we know it kind of had like a decent resurgence with them last year. It was one of the more bright spots they had on their team, but I don't know. I just don't know if an older LeBron and AD can't stay healthy with Russell Westbrook. I just you have to be really good in the West to compete. Like looking at the Grizzlies, looking at the Warriors, like these teams continue to get better. While they kind of the Lakers seem to have stayed where they were in the pandemic when they had won that championship. We'll have to wait and see. But I'm actually going to switch, so I'm going to bring on our guest, and I will bring Chris Winn right back on to talk some really good football news. Well, hopefully she's ready. I think there she is. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and bring her on. I'm really excited. RJ White, thank you so much for joining the show. I have like a million questions to ask you about all of this.
No worries. I thank you for having me.
So you've accomplished so much, first of all, like as just an entrepreneur, you're just like tearing up the town, like as of right now. You own like a European basketball team. I mean, just not a lot of people can say these types of things. So the first thing I want to ask you is, okay, yes, you just bought a very expensive piece of parcel in the metaverse, which is amazing. How do you even when did you learn about the metaverse? Have you been to the metaverse? And like, how do you even come across this parcel of land?
I was just in the metaverse last night, and I came across the piece of parcel of land from the Metaverse convention that was just recently hosted in Vegas this year. So I've already been in these conversations. We've had these conversations for like the last several months. My business partner is Corey Warfield, so he is literally like a collab, an incubation specialist. He's been in the metaverse far longer than I have. So as we thought about just different things that the metaverse is missing, we decided to just kind of collab together and bring ballin' in the metaverse. So it's pretty interesting.
Okay, if I was in an elevator pitch with someone a little older than me, and they said, "What is the metaverse?" I mean, what would you tell them that it is? Because that was Facebook's biggest downfall, or metaverse, I should say now. When they announced the metaverse, no one knew what it was. So when you're in the metaverse, what would you describe it as?
I would say the metaverse is more of like virtual reality. So most people look at it like if you're putting this VR headset on, like you have to, have, the hand pieces and steadily being cautious in the middle of the floor. But, the metaverse can be, accessed through different accolades. But me personally, I use my phone. And it's so many different worlds out there. So if I had to like really numb it down to, we'll say, a 3-year-old, right? The metaverse is virtual reality where you can make it your reality.
So you're able to enter, like, okay, in what capacity are you able to enter the metaverse through your phone? Because like those VR machines, like they're big machines and they take a lot of processing power. You have to have a nice computer to use those things. Well, there's some that are independently outside. So just describe, like, how do you join the metaverse on your phone?
So if you're using your actual handheld device, if you have, most metaverses have a Discord, so you can usually get like the access links through Discord, or some, metaverses have apps, you can actually access it through an app. I just did a test run last night where I literally just got text the link and I just was running around there with the link that was text to me. I think the traditional way of what people see it as is just this, like I said, the Oculus or something in front of the face. and you're kind of like in the middle of the floor with like a cautionary sticker in a circle, and you can't step outside of that circle. But there are plenty ways
Oh.
to enter into the metaverse. And just for us, as far as like balling in the metaverse, we plan to show people more ways to access the metaverse that make it more simpler and more easier, which is probably why we have such a successful outcome. We just did a test
Okay.
run. We have
Uh,
2,400 people.
yeah, I mean that's just incredible. So from what I saw in the press release for G Tour, you want to open up a state like a basketball stadium inside G Tour City. Is that right? And like a
That's correct.
basketball league. So are they playing basketball in the metaverse?
They are. They'll play
How,
basketball in the metaverse. They'll have meet and greets. We've partnered with several other industries, so we'll house some things in that stadium, as well as we're working on a mock project where our stadium will actually be a two-dimensional stadium. So you'll actually be able to go to the city that our real stadium is being built, and also be inside of that same stadium in the metaverse.
wow, I mean that's I would have just never thought of this as possible. I have like a joke on my graphic here about VR Troopers, like is an old show in the 80s about VR. Like it's just crazy how much it's developed. So how like who develops the basketball game inside the metaverse? Like is it G Tour? Is it an outside company? Is just like you can is basketball played the same way in all the metaverses?
It is. Well, to answer your first question, we have one of the best UX 3D animation character building specialists that you could think of for the metaverse. This He's done some stuff with some of the highest people in the industry right now. He's also working on some projects himself. He's actually going more into like car racing and things of that nature, but his graphics are just uncanny. We're working with him directly just to get more of like the actual realistic, facial expressions. We're talking about the eyes, the lips. It's funny you guys were talking about Russell Westbrook because we were using him as my mod for saying like Russell, if you ever pay attention to him, he has a moment where he'll like, smile or his eye will shut a little bit on the left side or he'll do like a smirk. And we actually are capturing all of that for our digital guys to make it an extreme reality to the T, I guess you could say.
And that's great. And technology is advancing like with all this stuff. It's just every single year, like it's just crazy. But okay, so there's a couple of things. Like the biggest problem I think with the metaverse is the access to it. Now, if you can join on your phone limitedly, it's kind of like almost having like a camera inside. I think that's really cool. I mean, what do you see the future when it comes to accessibility for the metaverse being? Because that seems to be the biggest entry point. Because otherwise, like probably there'd be a lot more people involved in it. I just if I was guessing.
I feel like as long as there's a way to make it easier to access it, I do feel like there would be a larger audience. And I think that way is coming in now that you literally can just send someone a link. Like I said, I literally got texted a link last night. I was literally running around in someone's world last night. And it was, what they say, make it so easy that a 3-year-old can do it, and it was just that simple. Like I literally two hands, one thumb, left thumb, right thumb, and I'm just running around in their world. So I do feel like it is becoming more easier. I do feel like it's something that is needed. We're not even going to talk about just the benefits of the metaverse for introverts and things of that nature. So I do actually I like it. I like the fact that we're bringing sports to it. I like the fact that we are expanding as quickly as we are. I like all of the interest and the investors that are coming to us with supporting the idea, not just of the stadium, but balling in the metaverse. And I think that we're going to take metaverse by storm.
Yeah, no, that's great. So the thing for me right now is like TikTok. Everybody engages with TikTok every day, or like not everybody, of course, but the majority of Americans. Do you see people engaging with the metaverse like as frequently? Like, would it be so popular that it replaces like some popular social media sites like TikTok, or are those things just two totally separate things? And
I do. I do and I don't. I'll answer this because I'll say for every time there's a new social media accolade that pops up, the others are still relevant, right? But I do feel like it would go into that 5th place, or 5th place where you say, okay, you have your Instagram, your Facebook, your TikTok, and then you have your metaverse, and then whatever else new phenomenon decides to pop up. Because every so often, so couple
oh yeah,
years, form does, come out.
no, that's great. Okay, I have one last question for you. So it relates to buying virtual real estate. It's hard enough to buy like real estate in real life. Like it's a very hard like investment to make. But I would also imagine that there's just got to be way different. Like, did you take out mortgages for these things? Like, do you go to the bank for these parcels of lands? Like, what are those investments like? And like, what's your opinion on virtual like real estate? Like, what do you think that's gonna be?
I think virtual real estate is going to be again the new phenomenon because a lot of people will live in the metaverse very often, and you only can be in there for so long before you're kind of like kicked out. So if you have a and you have rights to be there, just like any other cul-de-sac, right, or neighborhood. If you don't live there and you just walking around in there, they're going to ask you like, "Yo, what are you doing here?" So, to answer the other question about real estate, it's literally just like buying a home. In my case, it's just like buying a stadium. There is a full real estate contract that goes into place. There are attorneys that are involved. You have investors that are involved. You have financing that's involved, depending on what it is that you're buying. So it's literally like buying a home or financing a business. And if you are dealing with a company as strong as we are, because we're dealing with guys like TCG World, who just had the $102 million sale, and you're dealing with guys like GG Tour that's breaking glass ceilings. So they're coming with real contracts, real agreements. Our attorneys just talked yesterday, and everything is coming along perfect. But you just
That's
have it's real.
that's just incredible. Like, it just doesn't. I don't know. It's like somehow it doesn't sound real, but it totally is, and it's happening like right now. So okay, I do have a spin-off question off of that then.
No.
So like regular real estate obviously appreciates and depreciates in value due to a lot of factors. Do you see like virtual real estate being like more stable, or do you also see it kind of like maybe going up and down a lot like the regular housing industry does?
I actually feel like it would be like buying a home, and after you buy your home, you put some, minor improvements to your home, and it immediately appreciates in value. And then obviously, different things take place that increase the value of your home. But I honestly will say that I see the metaverse being $1 trillion industry. So I could see somebody buying property now, and it literally increases just as it would here if we were in the real world. Buying some property by up and coming area, and you see it, boom, you're on a golden piece of land. So I think it'll actually be the same way, because I've already had people inquire about our land. We haven't even
Wow.
put our stadium up yet. So I do foresee that being a big thing.
Okay, every time I ask you a question, I just get another question like in my mind. So it's like, okay, you're gonna obviously NFTs are a huge thing, and I had John Whitman on last week, and he talked about how your NFTs become very are physical in TCG world, like you can see them and interact with them on some sort of level. Okay, could you see like when you're buying parcels of land, like are you gonna have a bunch of NFTs within the stadiums? Like if you sell the stadium, you can package those into like like is that even conceivably possible, or like how does what an interaction like? Because I would imagine if you buy something like there's going to be investments, and I'm going to they're always going to be like from now on in NFTs, like because you're going to own those things virtually. It kind of makes sense in my mind. So would you package those together, or do you sell the NFTs separate?
No, actually, that's actually the caveat that we are going, or the model that we're going off of with our balling in the metaverse. Like our community has a really, really big voice when it comes to what is going on with balling in the metaverse, what's going on in our stadium, and what's going on with our events. So an only way to get them engaged, keep them engaged, and just so they can understand that they have a stake in our organization too, and that they have a voice too, is to give them NFTs. So NFTs will be a part of the balling in the metaverse. It would also be different ways for us to engage with our audience. And who knows? I mean, you may see some pretty big people coming into the metaverse, just enough to start that NFT collection with balling in the metaverse that we probably could bring out of retirement, or people that we've been asking about for some time about where are they. Those are going to be our NFTs. Like, hey, I thought they were retired, and here they are in the metaverse. So we'll see how it
Okay.
goes.
Yeah. Okay. This is seriously the last question I promise you this time. I don't want to take up all your time, but I want to talk about NFTs a little bit because when NFTs first came out, I feel like there was a huge buzz. It was like literally one of the most used words in the country. Like you could just tell like through trends,
Mhm.
and it took a really bad downfall because it just got a really bad rap. People were selling monkey pictures on Twitter for like $100,000, and so it became like a big joke. Like it did, and like the buzzword came off really hard. Like, can you describe just like obviously not in great detail, like what NFTs are and like what purpose they serve in the metaverse versus like kind of originally what people envision NFTs as?
So I feel like people envision NFTs as a collection. So think about back in the day when you had a Karl Malone card. You would take that card, you would put it into a plastic binder, and you would hold on to the card as it appreciates in value. And who knows, either you can keep it as a collector's item, or you could take it to a pawn shop and you could sell it. But either way, most people that are real sports junkies, right? They'll keep and hold on to that card and just let it continue to add value. Which you've seen some of the top collected cards selling for hundreds of $1,000s today. I would say that NFTs fall under that card collection category. Now, do we have every player in the world that has a collector's card? Of course. Some have value, some don't. As you deal with bigger businesses, they're going to have more exclusivity, right? Because they have the money to do a bigger collection. And then you have other people that say, hey, I just want an NFT. It might not mean anything to anyone else. It might be worth one penny. However, it's my, collection. So I do feel like it does give a collector's voice. I'm an artsy person. I love art. So I love to see all of the NFTs. When we're talking about an investment side of things, I like to see NFTs that will eventually bring value. And I'm seeing a lot more bigger companies invest in those today. So NFTs to me are a way to put your stamp in the metaverse, pay in the metaverse, and just kind of have something to say, hey, this is my little token for, what I'm doing here inside of the metaverse. Or you can buy it for.
Yeah, see, it seems to make more sense to have an NFT as something that you own in the metaverse versus something that exists in the ether. Like, I feel like it's just more tangible because it's backed by a literal billion-dollar company. So that does make more sense to me. Because I haven't gotten into NFTs too much just quite yet because I've kind of been waiting to see really what it's going to become. So I'm interested to see how it works with the metaverse mostly. I took up a lot of your time. I asked a bunch of questions, probably some of them pretty difficult, but thank you so much for coming on. It's just awesome to talk about the metaverse because it's just so new and exciting.
I know. I'm excited about it as well. Guys, stay tuned for Balling in the Metaverse. I think we're going to do some big things here.
Oh yeah, no, I will be keeping up and watching. Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Chris, are you ready to buy your parcels of land in the metaverse yet?
That's a fascinating discussion, I have to admit. And it's one more aspect of American and global society, quite frankly, that people are diving into. I got to admit, Wiz, I don't know enough about it yet where I'm going to take a full dive, so to speak, as far as that's concerned, because there's a lot of intricacies there in the discussion and the interview that you had there that I'm quite frankly seems above my pay grade, but I'm going to try to figure it out and maybe get involved at a later date.
Yeah. Do you think you'll ever buy a headset and go into the metaverse? Because I feel like even me, I'm 25, I'm on the borderline of I feel like who they're trying to get to go into the metaverse. That they're inviting everybody, but there's going to be at some point once the ages go on, it's just harder to get these people who are explaining the metaverse is insane. So like I said, I'm the cutoff. Do you think you'll ever get into the metaverse?
Look, it's funny, Wiz, you say that because it's hard to get people my age and older to even go on social media, my friend, and kind of jump into that. As far as, doing something like this where you're getting into the metaverse and you're exploring essentially a new type of way to communicate and a new type of way to, spend your leisure time and go down that road. I think it's going to take a little bit of time, to say the least.
Yeah, no, I'm not even all the way in on it yet. And I think I would understand the technology at the very least, but it's I don't know if I can do that. It's very strange, but there is a few things I want to talk to you about when it comes to the NFL. Yeah. And I want to start with Baker Mayfield. We haven't had a chance to talk about it on the show just quite yet. He got his request, so he leaves Cleveland. Okay, first of all, they say when they brought him in, it's going to be an open QB competition between him and Sam Darnold. I don't know. I don't really know where that comes from. Do you really think that's true? Do you really think that he's going to be competing? They're going to get 50 snaps during training camp? Because I feel like that's a big waste of time.
I got to say, I'd almost expect that be the case, given what they think they could get out of Baker Mayfield. We understand Baker Mayfield. We see what he brings to the table as an NFL quarterback. And I'll tell you what, as someone who doesn't have a dog in the fight, right, as you don't, Spence, when it comes to the Carolina Panthers, I can take a look at this absolutely subjectively and say, you know what, I don't know which guy is better for the Carolina Panthers. We know that they're in a division that's going to be extremely competitive this year, given obviously the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to be solid once again. We love what we see with the New Orleans Saints, despite the fact that, you're going through a coaching change there. Obviously, they have some very intriguing pieces on offense, particularly from a wide receiver position there. So, the Saints are going to be really good in that division. I mean, Carolina's going to be looking to see whether or not either one of these guys is the best fit. And Baker Mayfield outshines Sam Darnold in training camp, and they believe that he can be that guy that can get them competitive with the likes of the Buccaneers and the Saints and possibly the Atlanta Falcons. Then I don't think there's any question that Mayfield has a real opportunity there. So I look at it. I guess I just went the long way, Spence, to kind of answer your question, but I absolutely do think that it's going to be a competition in training camp between those two guys at the signal caller position.
I just can't imagine there's a scenario where Sam Darnold outplays Baker Mayfield. Also, like, they traded for him, so like there is like have you ever traded like a decent asset like just to get a fired up like training camp going? Maybe, I don't know. I've never ran a team, but it just feels like they just brought him in to be the starting quarterback, and I wish they would take that stance now. Basically, they're just biting their tongues. I think they gave it 2 third-round picks for Sam Darnold, and they don't want to admit that they were dead wrong about it. That's what it feels like.
Well, I mean, you can go back as far as the NFL draft for both these guys, right? You're talking about guys who are top picks, right, in the NFL draft, top 5 picks. So your expectations are they're going to be franchise guys. Now, in the case with, I'd push back on you a little bit when it comes to Sam Darnold because he's been in such just terrible situations, right, with the franchises he's been with, and injury situations for teams at key positions that have been detrimental to him. So I mean, I guess I'm trying to throw kind of a little love Sam Darnold's way, but make no mistake about it. This is a put up or shut up kind of time for both these guys, when it comes to the Carolina Panthers and moving forward. So there's going to be no more excuses, much like people talk about Derek Carr not having any more excuses anymore. Well, there's no more excuses for either one of these quarterbacks as far as not having personnel or being kind of in a volatile situation, because they have a real chance now here.
Yeah, well, I have a couple of things here. I mean, when I look at the Carolina Panthers roster, it's like pretty good, especially offensively. They have a great receiving core. So Baker Mayfield does have experience taking a team to the playoff as the starting quarterback. Like, there's no disputing that. Yes, his team was very good, but he was also the quarterback. It's a very important position. So do you think that Baker is enough to steal them a win against Tampa Bay, because they've been dominated, I think, the last 8 times I've played them in the division, which is like obviously just not what you want to do. And do you think that he could actually get them into like a wild card spot or the playoffs at all?
I absolutely think he can. Yes. And you talked about what he was able to do in Cleveland. Now, look, in fairness, also, Cleveland had probably the best tandem at running back that played there when Baker was playing there, obviously, last year. So you got Christian McCaffrey, pretty big piece, obviously, that is coming back healthy for the Panthers. So that's going to be a big key for these guys as well, too. But I don't think there's any question that they can throw a monkey wrench into the NFC playoff picture, given their schedule and given what Baker Mayfield, when he's playing at his best, and what he does bring to the table for what he's brought for the Cleveland Browns and what he can bring for the Carolina Panthers. I don't think there's any question that Carolina can absolutely be in the mix when it comes to the NFC.
Yeah, I mean, a healthy Christian McCaffrey, I mean, I can't imagine that's not like a top 10 offense. And I do believe there's a lot of merit to his shoulders injuries last year. And honestly, the city started to turn on him too. And if anybody doesn't think that there's a mental aspect of football, is obviously just never played before. And I think it got to him like a lot. I think it got to him a lot during the season. And he's got a fresh start. He's got a team who traded for him, so that means they have a desire. Another QB that's kind of in limbo, whose problems like haven't been figured out, it's Jimmy G. So I can't quite figure this one out, to be completely honest with you. I mean, this guy has taken them to a Super Bowl and what, the NFC Championship game like last year. Like, I don't know. I don't know how to interpret the Jimmy G situation. They're bringing in a quarterback who hasn't looked great when he's come in, as a starter, and they're actively trying to get rid of him, but they can't because he's got a huge contract. How do you unravel this situation with Jimmy G and the 49ers?
Well, Wiz, I'll interpret it like this, and which is probably how the Niners are eyeing this up. When you draft a quarterback, Trey Lance, as high as you do, your expectations are he's going to be that guy. He's going to be your franchise guy. And, not taking away from what you just said, which is 1,000% true, that Jimmy G has proven that he is a quarterback in this league. He's proven that he can play and that he can be a difference maker for a franchise and can get them to the next level and get them on a level where, you can play deep into the playoffs. But I also think that there's kind of an element here for the San Francisco 49ers where they're ready to take that gamble. They're ready to roll the dice. And what I mean by that is they think that Trey Lance is ready now. And we've seen with a lot of quarterbacks, particularly here in the last, 10, 15, 20 years, it doesn't take quarterbacks. They don't have to be the Aaron Rodgers where they sit behind Brett Favre for 5, 6, 7 years. It doesn't have to be the case. A lot of these young quarterbacks, they come right in, year 1, year 2, year 3, and they're instantly already a factor and instantly can already play. And so I think the San Francisco 49ers are saying, you know what? We're going to take our chances. We think Trey Lance is that guy. We drafted him in the top 5 because we believe he's that guy. And, look, this wasn't a situation where the Niners drafted Trey Lance in the 5th or 6th round and said, oh, yeah, we're going to take a flyer on this guy. He's a project. He might make it, might not. That's not the mindset that San Francisco has. Their mindset is more, okay, we think he's going to be ready sooner than later, and therefore they believe that that makes Jimmy G expendable. Now, you can debate till the cows come home whether or not you think they'd be better off with Jimmy G or Trey Lance. Me personally, I think they'd be better off with Jimmy G, but, that's just the Detroit Lions fan talking over here. I probably don't know too much about quarterbacks. But that being said, I think that San Francisco 49ers are ready to roll the dice and believe that Trey Lance is that guy. But not, your point notwithstanding, it's not exactly like Trey Lance has shown early on here that, he's ready to be a, big-time franchise quarterback. But maybe the San Francisco 49ers disagree with us and want to go that direction.
Well, they clearly do. Okay, if Trey Lance is not up to the bill, right, or at least as good as Jimmy G, this has to go down as one of the biggest failures in franchise history, in the NFL, because they have a Super Bowl caliber team. Obviously, they almost went to the Super Bowl last year. They almost won one before that. So if they were just imagine if they had used their pick on a defensive player or a wide receiver or whatever the case may be, a very good skill position player, and they kept with Jimmy G, which is what I thought they should have done in the first place. I don't really know where this quarterback conversation came from. They're on the borderline of ruining their franchise, because if Trey Lance isn't good, they're gonna have to deal with that for at least 3 years before they give up on him, and then by that time the team falls apart, right? I mean, that's just that I can really envision that happening. It's unbelievable that a Super Bowl team could collapse this quickly.
I think you're right there. I would say there's a couple franchises that might argue with you as far as biggest terrible moves with respect to DeMarcus Russell, obviously with the Raiders, and possibly Ryan Leaf, of course, with the San Diego Chargers back in the day. Even with the Detroit Lions with Andre Ware.
But those were bad teams. Yeah. That's the thing. Those were bad teams. This is a Super Bowl team.
But I'm just talking about quarterbacks. Yeah, I'm talking about quarterback moves.
Oh, I'm not talking.
As far as drafting QBs. You know what I'm saying, Wiz? Drafting QBs and expecting them to be big-time quarterbacks, or expecting them to be franchise guys, or just starting quarterbacks in the league and just not panning out. And so if Trey Lance ends up being a guy that's not, up to the task, right? If he ends up being not that guy, then there's no question. Yeah, the Niners will have shot themselves in the foot and will have taken a serious step back. And it's not like there are those teams like the Raiders back when they drafted Russell, not like the Chargers when they drafted Ryan Leaf. These teams that were kind of also rans that weren't necessarily playoff teams. They will be, the San Francisco 49ers who were right there in the mix in the NFC, who had a chance to be on the precipice of possibly going to the Super Bowl and winning the Super Bowl. And then, you make a drastic move like this and it doesn't pan out with Trey Lance at quarterback.
Yeah. It's crazy. I think it's the biggest storyline of the NFL season, if I'm being completely honest. It's that and the Chiefs dealing without their star players. I think those are the two biggest storylines going into the NFL season. So we'll have to wait and see there.
Yeah.
I have one question I didn't put on the rundown, but it is football related, and then we're going to get to the Raiders. I want to talk about Trevor Lawrence because I feel like there's been a lot of hype about him again. So, of course, the rookie season was a complete failure because they hired a dunce as their head coach. It's just crazy how that. I mean, I don't think we look back at that enough and realize just how ridiculous and crazy it was. So he's got Peterson now, a Super Bowl coach. He's got Super Bowl experience.
Mm-hmm.
Are you buying the hype? Because a lot of, at the very least, fantasy, big time fantasy guys are saying he's a borderline QB1 in fantasy this year, which means he's going to be way better than he was last year, which of course is a very low bar to clear. But how much better do you think he's going to be?
I think he's going to be better. I like the match with Peterson, obviously, as the head coach there, as opposed to last year, which was a complete debacle across the board and a very difficult position to put a rookie quarterback in with respect to that locker room, period. I mean, it was just completely ridiculous how that was all handled. That being said, though, I do like, bringing Peterson. I think that you saw Trevor Lawrence, even last year, the guy threw for 3,800 yards last year. He almost got to 3,800 yards. I think he will surpass that this year, which means that, he's a guy that's going to be able to air it out a little bit more. And I think he's going to have, personnel is going to be much better this year as well, too, on that side of the football. So I think there's a real chance that Jacksonville could be, do I think they're going to be a playoff team? Absolutely not. But I think they could possibly be, kind of like a 6-11, 7-10 type of team that could maybe make some noise when it comes to the AFC South.
Is that, would you count that as success? I mean, I don't know. Is that a good?
I would count that as success. Well, it's Peterson. It's going to be Peterson's first year. They don't need to have ridiculous, unrealistic expectations like Peterson had in Philadelphia with the Eagles, right, where they win a Super Bowl. But I think if you're 3 games under 500 and you're a team that was one of the worst teams in football a year ago, much like my Detroit Lions, I think it would be a success if they were able to get to a 7-10. Obviously a little less success if it's a 6-11 team, but in that territory as far as record, I think that it would be chalked up as a success in Doug Peterson's first season in Jacksonville.
Yeah, so I would imagine that the expectation is within the next 3 years, including this one, they have to make the playoffs. Like that is just that's the mark of a good franchise with the quarterback. Because every scouting report for Trevor Lawrence was like Andrew Luck 2.0. So it's like you can't just have that and not make the playoffs in the first 4 years of his career. Like no other quarterback of that caliber has missed the playoffs. We'll finish up here, with our very own Las Vegas Raiders. So there's been a few social media clips running around. I'll show one, and we'll talk about the Raiders.
And that's honestly how I feel. I just got to be more honest. I just got to start speaking my mind. And as I'm getting older, I just say what I want to say, And so my real answer is the expectation, all that kind of stuff. Who says that? Honestly, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. Whether they don't say anything or they say a lot, nobody cares. Hopefully they talk about us at the end. You know what I mean? But right now, that crap don't matter.
It doesn't matter, Derek. Why do you talk about it and why do you?
Thank you, Paul. It's so good to see you. I say it because I'm a positive person, and I try and encourage my teammates. There's a way that I say things to encourage my locker room, to maybe put a chip on their shoulder, and sometimes I do it too much. And so I don't appreciate your tone either. You can pump that back a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, I like the clap back there. I'm not going to lie. I thought that was pretty awesome. He's just like, yeah, shut your mouth. Okay, he's saying a lot more too. I'll add this and I'll get all your comments. So this is a quote from Derek Carr, also from that same press conference. It's going to be fun, Carr said recently, according to the Athletics Tafer. No one thinks anything of us, and I think that's what makes it fun, is you always have to put the ball down and play the football games. And you get frustrated when you see people's names and on things and on this and that, and you're like, we're here too. We feel like we got better too. I thought we made the playoffs. It doesn't guarantee anything this year, but it does guarantee that we have some good guys. All right. Well, Derek Carr's fired up. I mean, it is the beginning of training camp. Kind of makes sense. But I don't know. What do you make of his Is Derek Carr rightly so fired up about this Las Vegas Raiders team?
Derek Carr is going to be fired up every season, okay, when he's the quarterback of the Las Vegas Raiders, or the Oakland Raiders. Here's the thing, man. And by the way, there was a cool segment over on our sister station, ESPN Las Vegas, where they talked to Mark McMillan talking about the Raiders feeling disrespected or the Raiders not getting enough love nationwide when it comes to this team. Give me a break, okay? I agree with Mark. It is completely ridiculous. What has been the major storyline? You talk about the narratives, right, Wiz, when it comes to going into this 2022-23 NFL season. You talked about some of the key points, the Niners being a key point. You talked about the Chiefs as well. Who hasn't been talking about the AFC West as a whole? It's been the most intriguing and interesting aspect to the offseason in the NFL, period. And the Raiders have been part of that discussion, part of that, obviously getting Devontae Adams in the mix, who, by the way, yesterday said Derek Carr is a Hall of Famer, which was awesome, I thought, and a little bit hilarious, and we shall see, because I think Derek still has some work to do. But it's not the Raiders aren't getting disrespected or not getting enough coverage. I'm telling you, Wiz, I turned on the TV last week like 3 times over on ESPN and Fox Sports and NFL Network. And obviously, because the Raiders were the first team to go to training camp, but you saw, interviews with Hunter Renfrow on ESPN being run live. Okay, so the Raiders get a ton of love and a ton of exposure. And so this idea that maybe Derek Carr and maybe other Raiders might be trying to put a virtual chip on their shoulder about this year and saying, oh yeah, maybe people are trying to sleep on us and don't respect us. Okay, I get it. I mean, as a team and in your locker room, you might want to do that. But the reality around the league is everybody knows what the Raiders are about. Everybody is fired up to see these teams, the AFC West, go at it, whether it's the Raiders and the Chiefs, the Raiders and the Broncos, Broncos and the Chiefs, and then the Chargers against everybody else as well, too. I mean, it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm telling you right now, myself and Brian Feldman, we're Detroit Lions guys. We are NFC North guys. A lot of us are fired up to see what happens in the AFC West this year. And the Raiders are very much a part of that. And the Raiders absolutely, I mean, there's people out there saying that all 4 teams in the division can make the playoffs, which I think is a very, very good possibility. And I pencil the Raiders in for 10 and 11 wins this season, despite the fact that of all that, extra stuff that was going on last year, that was just craziness, and they were still able to make the playoffs. This year, they don't have to deal with a lot of that stuff. So, obviously, there's a lot of player personnel changes throughout the division and throughout football. But this idea that the Raiders are being slept on for the 22-2 season, I think is a bunch of malarkey, Wiz. And I think that the Raiders are very much talked about, and it's going to be very much a big part of the chatter across the board and across the country when it comes to the NFL.
Yeah, I agree with you in that the media has covered the Raiders a lot, but if you look at the betting market, I feel like it does tell a bit of a different story. Like the Raiders are a far cry to win. It's like almost, they're trying to say it's almost statistically impossible for the Raiders to win the AFC West. I think they're like plus 600, and the other teams are like not even above plus 200. So like the betting market thinks there's a big cutoff between the 3 teams and the Raiders. So that could be a little bit where that comes from. Not that, I mean, there are betting partners with the NFL now, so it's not like it's a secret anymore. But okay, last comments on the Raiders, because I've been thinking about this, and I want to get your opinions too. So here's the deal. The Raiders got significantly better at the wide receiver position, obviously. We don't need to discuss much there. They got, let's say they got significantly better at the defensive line. Sure. Like, I think it could be marginal, but let's say significant. They got significantly worse at the linebacker position. Like, no one's really talking about that. They brought in one kid, Jayon Smith from the Titans, who I do like, but he's injury prone. So, and they lost KJ Wright, who was legitimately like one of the top 3 defensive players for the Raiders last year, in my opinion. They lost the best player for the Raiders on defense last year in Casey Hayward. They got significantly worse at the cornerback position. So, and they got marginally better at the offensive line. It's not much, but they got marginally better. Do those things equal out to you? Because I'm concerned a lot about their defense. I don't know if the defense may have had better skill position players brought in, but overall they got worse, at least to me. And the defense was actually the strong suit of the Raiders. It was the best defense they've had since 2008.
Yeah, Wiz, I think it's a fair concern, but I think that the Raiders are going to be able to compensate given offensively what they'll be able to do this year, because they're going to be able to outscore teams. I mean, they're really flat out going to be able to put up points. I can see this Raider team going out there and putting up 30 points, in their sleep against even some quality football teams out there. So defensively, yes, I see your point. If you want to look at it glass half full, which having a chance to be on sports radio here in Vegas for the last month and a half, 2 months, this is a lot of the narrative is we love the leadership that we're going to get from Denzel Perriman, obviously, and Max Crosby and those guys. We think that Mooring one more year in is going to be a much better player back in that secondary. So I think that's going to be they think it's going to be potentially a good thing for them. Although I do take into consideration what you said about as far as their secondary. I do think their secondary does have some issues without question, as does their linebacking core. But overall, do I think the defense is going to be worse than last year? I don't think so. I think they're going to be actually a little bit better because they have a little bit more experience, and those guys are going to be very much counted on when it comes to this defense. So, but offensively, I just think that they're going to be much more explosive. Given you have that combination of Josh McDaniels, now the head coach of the team, who is obviously an offensive guy, and he's going to do the whole New England thing with running backs. So when it comes to fantasy football, folks out there, you're probably not going to be taking too many Raider running backs. Even though I do love Josh Jacobs and Kenyon Drake and some others as well too. But the combination of Waller, Hunter Renfrow, and obviously Devontae Adams there at the wide receiver position and some others. I think Derek Carr is primed to have a big year. And I think that offensively, they're just going to be so dynamic that defensively, they're going to be able to have some leeway when it comes to that side of the football.
Yeah, I think on paper, they have the best offense in the NFL, right? You have one of the best tight ends. You have the best receiver in football and a top 10 running back in Hunter Renfrow is just there too. So I think when you factor all those things in, I mean, it's incredible. We'll see. I don't know. I'm a Raiders fan, so I have to be very pessimistic about how they're going to perform. I'll be rooting for them every week, but we'll see if that actually comes out because it is going to be a tough year. You're playing a playoff team, and every single time you face a division opponent, a playoff caliber team at least. So that will.
So, Wiz, one quick question for you though: Do you agree with Devontae Adams? Do you think Derek Carr is a Hall of Famer?
No, of course not. I don't think it's impossible, but he's gonna have to win a Super Bowl, obviously, and he's gonna have to do some crazy stuff in the next 8 years. Because he's obviously not. If he retired today, he wouldn't even be considered a Hall of Famer. So he's gonna have to get a ring under his belt, and I think we can go from there. I'll take a ring. I'll be the first to vote for him as a Hall of Fame. I will stand outside the Hall of Fame, building, putting signs up for Derek Carr if they win a Super Bowl for every year. So we'll have to see. But yeah, pretty interesting stuff. Thanks for joining the show today, Chris. It was really fun. Hopefully we're on the radio next week. That would be nice for this radio show. But still, it was great to talk to you and, get some sports out there because football is coming back really soon. The Raiders play in the Hall of Fame game in a couple weeks. And, man, I can't wait for that.
Great stuff, Spencer. Thanks for having me on. Always a good time joining the Outta Line crew. And we'll hope you have a good week.
Yeah. All right. We'll see everybody next time.